a little bit early, about 4 minutes earlier than when this was scheduled. The reason I'm doing this is I was actually supposed to go cycling for like a big cycle this morning, but it's raining outside, sort of drizzling, and it's scheduled to continue drizzling the whole morning. So I'm probably going to go to ride in the gym instead, and I don't really want to go. I don't really like that feeling of cycling indoors very early and getting sweaty when it's sort of still dark, kind of thing. The sun hasn't quite come up yet. So some of my friends are going to gym, but I'll probably miss out on the first hour or so of what they're doing. And so I kind of want to get this live, I don't want to say out the way, but I don't want to have it still sort of hanging over me on Monday. I'll probably do another walkthrough on, what's it, Tuesday or Wednesday. So we're going to do Barry Morphew now. We'll be doing Vincent van Gogh a little bit later on Sunday, and then Barry Morphew again probably Tuesday, something like that. Okay. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to go through the affidavit from page 57, and I actually wanted to kick off with Barry Morphew's statements, but there's something I think we need to kick off with that's even more pertinent. It's going to kind of really shock you. I mean, I was just, as I was preparing this, I was like, wow, I didn't know about that. So we'll start off with that. Do you want to say hi to Timmy? I think we kind of need to get started like really quickly in the next 2-3 minutes. Stephanie, it's also quite late in Connecticut. It's probably about 10:30 at night there, and Stephanie's not going to be here for that long either. Hey, Timmy. Hey. Timmy's very happy. I brought him a big bone like this size, and so he's quite a happy doggy. Terry says we have only had a sprinkle of rain in the last 5 weeks, and this is our rainy season. Terry, I think I'm not sure, where are you actually in the world? I should know, but I don't. Stephanie, are you still in Disney World, or have you come back? I presume that robotics thing was why you were in Disney World, right? Okay, well, Timmy's settling down. Okay, shall we get going? I see you now. Okay. Am I buffering or something? Stephanie says, went to Disney last month. Oh, yeah, well, I actually don't either. I try not to do it at the same time that I'm away. I still did, when I saw those photos, I did think it's kind of unlike you not to mention something like that, but I think you did mention some time ago that you were going, didn't you? For your anniversary, I think you did. Anyway, okay, tuned in, okay. Yeah, I don't think it's clever for anybody to, if you're traveling, to be putting up photos all the time, because there are certain opportunists out there that aren't very happy that are following you or might be following you, and they might be, oh, you've got a nice car, oh, you've got a nice phone, oh, you've got a nice this or that. And there have been quite a few incidents like that in true crime where someone doesn't need to follow you in the real world, they can follow you in the virtual world and then do something. So definitely be cautious. Rebecca, Hannah, welcome to the Transit Lounge. Good to have you here. Welcome. Okay, so we're 5 minutes in. I think that's enough. Hello. let's get going. So we're starting on page 57. It's 2 pages before section 6, which is this critical section where Barry Morphew gives additional statements. And all of these are statements from 2021. So bear in mind, I think he gave 8 statements between May 13th and July, right? 8, and then I think he gave another 7 from 2021 onwards, sort of in the first 4 months of 2021. And this is pretty incredible what comes out here. I mean, if you thought those first 8 statements, there was quite a lot in them, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, kind of thing. Okay, so we're going to go to page 57. I don't know, Stephanie, have you got the affidavit in front of you? It's probably not. I wanted to screen grab these pages, but I'll do it after this. I just didn't have time. So have a look. Oh, okay, got the affidavit. Yeah, it's kind of useful to do that. I'd love to provide you with a link, but I've kind of got it downloaded, so I don't have the link. But if you do have the link, Stephanie, would you put it out there? Appreciate it. Okay, so we are now going to deal with someone called Holly Wilson, right? From October 20th, remember Suzanne Morphew went missing early May, sort of mid-May. It was around about, well, I think she died May 9th, but she went kind of missing May 10th, right? Her remains have never been found. We're approaching 2 years since she disappeared. And so around about 6 months after that, 5-6 months after that, from October through December 2020, Holly Wilson, these were friends of Suzanne's from church, recorded her phone and in-person, this is quite interesting, and in-person conversations with Barry, providing those recordings to Special Agent Grusing. Now, what's quite interesting with this is it's a kind of a scenario like Amber Frey, not that an affair was going on, but the same sort of scenario of a little bit maybe flirtatious things going on and statements being made, but a woman recording Barry. Did you guys know about this? So there's this woman who's recording what Barry was saying to her. So anyway, let me go through this. Holly and her husband, Jeff Wilson, knew Barry and Suzanne well through their church in Indiana. During these recordings, Barry told Holly words to the effect, "You are Suzanne to me." He held her hand while in the car, gave her a kiss goodnight, told Suzanne would approve of whatever would happen in their relationship, and twice touched Holly's breasts, pretending like the touches were accidents when her husband's head was turned away or not looking. Barry told Holly that he had an ex-FBI guy working for him, and sometimes saying he had a PI, a private investigator, working for him who charged him over $50,000. Barry wouldn't specify if these people were the same, whether the PI or the ex-FBI guy was the same person. Once Barry told Holly and Jeff that he may have found where someone was holding Suzanne, right? Once Barry told Holly and Jeff that he may have found where someone was holding Suzanne and asked Jeff to come to Colorado to cut the guy's balls off. That's quoting from Barry. The following is a brief summary of the pertinent quotes from the recordings of Barry and Holly. November 5th, 2020, when Barry was asked if he had thoughts of what happened to Suzanne, he responded that he had 2 ideas. Barry said, one, somebody took her right there where the bike was, just they threw her in the car or she got in willingly, whatever, and ran off. Or somebody chased her and she's in the river and she's still in the river right now today, somewhere in a log jam. Barry said he did not see anything else, adding the FBI was telling him that she left on her own. and they were trying to tell me that she left. Barry said she did not leave. He knew she would not do that. It's quite interesting. In a weird way, it's similar to the Summer Wells case. Do you think she wandered off? No. She definitely wouldn't have wandered off. So with Suzanne, it's like she wouldn't leave. She would definitely not leave. She wanted to actually divorce Barry. So she actually did want to leave. Holly asked Barry if his guy was able to go through the list of people whom Suzanne was Facebook friend requesting. He replied he had not spoken to him about it. Holly wondered out loud if someone else hacked into Suzanne's Facebook. Holly said it was unlike Suzanne to send out a lot of requests, asserting, if I had to bet, I'd say it wasn't her. Barry said, yeah, she wasn't like that. Barry was asked about the last thing he said to Suzanne. He replied, I don't even know. That is also pretty unbelievable. Like, can you remember the last thing you said to your wife? No. He says, I don't even know. It was just a normal night. We just ate dinner together and just had a quiet evening like we probably saying normally do, but that part's unintelligible. It's a little bit moderated to what he was saying to the police, where he said we had this perfect night together. It was wonderful. He's just saying we just ate dinner and had a quiet evening. Holly's spouse asked Barry what someone would do with Suzanne if that person took her. Barry said that the person would keep her in a basement. Holly challenged Barry that someone would hold onto her for 6 months. So I think Barry said, she's still alive, but someone's holding on to her. Barry said, and if that's the case, then she's underwater because there's no evidence of anything else that surfaced. So I'm going to just give a little bit of my thoughts on this. This could either just be nonsense, right? It could either just be nonsense, or personally, I don't think that Suzanne is in a river or anything like that. But I do think the reason that water is mentioned here may be relevant, meaning we know when Barry Morphy went to the hotel room that there was a lot of wet towels lying there, that there were the smell of chemicals, and so on. And so it's possible that where he says she's underwater, anything else that surfaced, it's possible that that might actually have some sort of psychological resonance. Let me just say, as a disclaimer, Barry's innocent until proven guilty. We're going through this affidavit to assess the value of it from the prosecution's perspective, where one can go with certain points, but also evaluate it in terms of his defense. So when you read this, it could also just be nonsense. It could just be, not necessarily pertinent. For example, what he says about the bike. So the other thing that's quite interesting is where he says somebody chased her, right? Well, didn't somebody chase her? And there's this idea of Barry chasing chipmunks, and there he's saying maybe somebody chased her. I'm just saying sometimes when people are lying or not telling the truth, they might do that literally out of their own experience. It's not sort of completely left field. It is something they've seen either on television or something that they've done recently or something that they've heard somewhere. It tends to come out of your psychology, right? It's revealing what you've been thinking, what you've been seeing in a way. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a murderer, but if you are the murderer, you would say certain things for a certain reason. In the Chris Watts case, the agent specifically solicited this kind of response. Tell me all the ways you think Shanann could disappear. And the one way was that, Chris Watts said you could lure her into a trap, kind of thing, right? I'm trying to remember if he mentioned poisoning her. I can't really remember if he said that, but we now know that that was happening. Okay, so December 5th, 2020, let me just look at your comments here. Terry says they pull from memory. Stephanie says, say the word surfaced. Yeah. Did Barry use the word surfaced? Yes, he did. Okay. Stephanie writes red flag. Terry also said Donwell said Summer was in a dungeon. That is quite a graphic thing. You're thinking kind of in a dark place. You're thinking in a dungeon is sort of buried underground kind of thing. It's subterranean, put it that way. Timmy's slipping down. Okay, Timmy, can you try and just stay calm? Can you guys hear the birds singing? They seem to be singing even though it's raining or dripping. What was the other thing that Don said? Just something that's kind of came into my mind and I slipped my mind. In terms of, yeah, sorry, Timmy just distracted me, so I'm kind of, Barry used the word surfaced in a dungeon. So to me, if something happened in the garage, then you can think of that almost like a basement, a sort of an area that's lightless, that's dark, if you know what I mean. So that's just certainly worth thinking about. Terry says, I read somewhere that no one can draw a random person. That image in their mind is drawn from faces they've seen before, either consciously or subconsciously. That's quite interesting. Something else that's quite interesting is, I can't remember where I heard it, but I've always found it fascinating. They say, somebody said, can you draw a brand new creature, like some kind of alien creature that's never been seen before? And then, the person drew, the body of a duck, the head of a giraffe, the arms of a crocodile, the tail of a peacock or whatever. But the result was a mishmash of something that already exists. None of it's original. None of it is kind of a brand new thing. We tend to be a little bit like that ourselves. We're derivative even in our mendacities. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we go to December 5th, 2020. Holly talked to Barry on FaceTime, and he said, I've been talking to the detectives and the FBI guy regularly now. He said, they seem to be on my side finally and helping me kind of feel better about things because of what they're telling me. So bear in mind what's happening here is Barry's seems to be influencing the narrative to some extent. Bear in mind, within about 5 months, he's going to be arrested and charged. So do you really think that the authorities are on his side? He says Barry thinks that they've got Suzanne's phone. They found it by the bike, or they found it on the search, or they found it in the house. They won't tell me. They won't even tell me they have it, but I'm pretty sure they have her phone. So it's quite weird. It's like sometimes rumors come into social media and you sort of wonder where they come from. Well, this can give you an idea. Oh, no, they actually have got Suzanne's phone. Oh, okay. How do you know? Well, I got it from a really credible source. Oh, okay. Who is that? Well, turns out to be Barry. Doesn't it help Barry that they found Suzanne's phone when in reality Suzanne's phone has never been found? They don't have Suzanne's phone. They got the messages and texts from call records, and I think to some extent from Barry's phone. Okay, so Barry said, my guy knows I had nothing to do with it. He's already said he's proven that with his investigation. Holly asked what the private investigator is waiting for then in talking to the detectives. Barry replied, I think because they've been on different pages for so long, and he told me that, and everybody's told me this, that 80% of the time it's the spouse. Barry asserts the FBI told him they never give the house and cars back, and yet they gave Barry his house and cars. Barry said he told them, I think I know why you did, because you found no evidence, because there is no evidence. It doesn't exist. So in this situation, it seems like Barry is very confident. It seems like Barry is either assuming that, so it could be one of two things. One, that he did something and he's assuming he's getting away with it. The other one is that he's assuming just that the authorities are not that focused on him, that they feel like that there's no evidence. Let me just read this again. He says, Barry said that the FBI told him they never give the house and cars back, and yet they gave Barry his house and cars. And that kind of is somewhat true. In so many cases, the John Benet Ramsey case, the Chris Watts case, the Scott Peterson case, you kind of have houses and cars that become crime scenes for quite a long time. I don't know if it's true that they never give, for example, the house back, but the house can be impounded for months and months and months. Vehicles can also be impounded for a very long time, but of course, if there isn't any evidence, they do give it back. It is quite interesting that Barry, in this case, did get the house and cars back. It is quite interesting. But the other side is, did they really find no evidence? And I did actually mean to go through the evidence now, but I thought it was just more important to juxtapose his statements. As I think you've already found within the first 20 minutes of this live stream, it's pretty incredible what's in this affidavit. December 17, 2020, in downtown Salida. So I guess this was also where, bear in mind, I think Holly and Jeff are from Indiana, so they'd have been in town then. And so this is where this was recorded, in downtown Salida, about a week before Christmas in 2020. Barry said, I don't know if she was there and then what she was doing, putting in her body behind my back, but all I did was work or hunt, and she had idle time. Idle hands are the devil's tools. She had 21 years of doing absolutely nothing but being a mom. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, during the previous live stream, I said, could it have upset Barry? Could he have felt resentment that on a Saturday he is working, right? He's with Morgan Gentile, and they're sort of going to that riverside property, right? And meanwhile, his wife is suntanning by the pool, and I don't know whether he knew it or not, but she's actually flirting with somebody else. She's, if you even just look at the tone of her message, guess who's not here, or something like that. It's kind of a scenario where she's anyway got this leisure time, and he's working on a Saturday. And part of his alibi is that he was also working on a Sunday, and that's completely normal. Well, what does that show you? It shows you somebody who has to work on a weekend, kind of thing. Meanwhile, his partner is completely, free to not work. Did he resent that? And remember, I used the example of, you might be studying for an exam as a younger person, and your sibling or friend has already written the exam, or vice versa. It tends to feel a bit resentful, like, I wish I didn't need to do this kind of thing, right? But just look how he seems to demonize his wife. Idle hands are the devil's tools. She had idle time. She had 21 years of doing absolutely nothing but being a mom. And then he also says something about she was putting something in her body behind my back. It's also this very graphic thing of something going into the body, like he previously spoke about. I don't know if she had alcohol in her or chemicals in her. I wouldn't really think of it that way. It's like, did you drink something or did you take something? I wouldn't think of, did you have that in you kind of thing. He literally says, putting in her body. Just those words, putting in her body behind my back. And he says, all I did was work or hunt. So he definitely feels resentful. He definitely feels like the victim. He definitely feels like, I think he wants some idle time. Maybe he wants what she has, so that, she's got money. Maybe he wants her money. Why should I have to work? I'm your husband. Why should I have to work when you've got so much money? I don't know. But I wonder what he meant when he said, I don't know if she was What do you think, Stephanie? Oh, I think he was going to possibly say depressed. I don't know if she was depressed. What do you think? He said, I don't know if she was could be depressed, what she was doing, putting in her body behind my back, but all I did was work. She had idle time. Anyway, Holly later said that Suzanne going to Al-Anon helped her detach from Barry. Barry said, let's go. I can't hear it. He stood up immediately and walked out of the restaurant. That's quite interesting. So I think that there maybe is some, how can I put it? There is some substance, excuse the pun. Suzanne did go to Al-Anon, I guess that's Alcoholics Anonymous. I can't quite remember if she went on behalf of someone else or because I think her father actually owned a brewery. Do you guys know about that? I don't know what her actual story is in terms of that aspect, whether she did drink more than usual. That's definitely an aspect that Barry seems to be emphasizing. Is some of it based on the truth? Holly is saying that Suzanne was going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Is it Alcoholics Anonymous? Stephanie, who's also a mom, says doing absolutely nothing but being a mom, that's everything. Yeah. Stephanie says these words are just so degrading. Yeah. Terry says it feels like injecting like a dart. Stephanie says, I was thinking that. Stephanie says, isn't this the woman Holly that Barry was photographed with leaving the restaurant? People speculated she was a mistress, but now we learn that she was not. Could be. I do remember it was taking place around Christmas time. Stephanie, see if you can Google, that's, I think, a Daily Mail article. See if they identify her as Holly. I know what you're talking about. Okay, so going further, Holly said that Barry could never describe what his last image of Suzanne was to her. Remember, I also highlighted that, just that is very odd. It's very, very odd. It's one of the classic things that you ask in a criminal investigation. What is the last thing, or should be asked? What is the last thing you saw in terms of this person? What is the last thing they said? What's the last thing you said to them? The fact that Barry can't actually even come up with something is very, very odd. And he didn't only fail to come up with something to Holly, but also to the investigators. One does wonder whether the investigators asked her to press him on this. They couldn't get the answer. Now they're asking her to try and get the answer. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Barry says, well, I'll tell you right now, we had sex that night and she was naked when I went to sleep. So she obviously got up and put her pajamas on. And when I left in the next morning, she was laying right there in bed. I didn't pull up the covers and look what she was wearing, if that's what you're asking me. Barry continued, and it upsets me that women have to have their little secrets behind their husband's back when I'm her best friend. And it pisses me off. It pisses me off that if my wife went behind my back and said that SHIT about me. He continued, that's the problem with women. They get their little things going between each other and they have no respect for their husbands. Barry said later, well, she said I cheated on her. Holly confirmed Suzanne told her the same. Barry said, but I didn't. Barry said later, I mean, if I would have done one thing wrong, I would be in jail right now. Now, what's quite interesting with this is, especially, I've got to be careful saying this because you use certain words and YouTube demonetizes you, but you're getting the actual way that Barry thinks and talks. Is it a kind, generous way, or is it a very brash, black and white, kind of aggressive manner? And when you look at Barry and you look at these statements, you've got to ask, do they fit with one another? Was this just an off day, or does this feel... Thanks a lot for that, Stephanie. Well, thanks for joining us, Nisi. Thanks a lot for joining us. Because part of our job in true crime is to develop a profile of someone. What is their true identity? And the reason I chose the cover where you see two Barrys is to kind of emphasize this idea of there's the Barry we think we know, but isn't there also another Barry? And to some extent, that's true of all people. All of us kind of have a mask. I actually watched the movie The Batman recently, and somebody said to him, you know what? You are not the man behind the mask. The mask is actually you, which is actually quite true. That's actually quite a true point. Sometimes we wear a mask and that actually becomes who we are, in a sense. The other thing that I think is interesting is he's trying to convince Holly that he didn't cheat on Suzanne. Meanwhile, it feels like he's flirting with Holly when her husband's not looking. So to Holly, he's kind of making the case that he didn't cheat on Suzanne, but he's kind of... Thanks a lot, Marta Aldama. Thanks a lot for that. It's like he's saying, I didn't cheat on her, but meanwhile, to this person that is making that case, he is touching her breasts. He says it's by accident. But then he also says something about Suzanne would approve of their relationship or something. So it's kind of strange. If you push it to the one side, you could say it's hypocrisy, being a total hypocrite. If you push it to the other side, you might say, well, maybe there's an innocent explanation for it. Maybe, maybe not. That is a question that I think is quite important is, okay, so Suzanne had an affair. Did he have an affair? And did that have an impact on her relationship with him? Does Barry kind of want his cake and eat it? Does he kind of want things both ways? Barry said, what you guys had in your little private conversations has nothing to do with the situation that we're in, unless she left on her own. And if that's the case, then I'm sure she'll surface someday. There's the word again, surface. I'm sure she'll surface someday for her daughters, but I don't believe that's the case. I truly believe that her disappearance was out of anyone's hands but God's. And God allowed that to happen for some reason, and we might never know until we get to heaven. So again, this is really turning the events into something biblical, that this is part of God's plan. and we must all leave it to God, and it's, God works in mysterious ways. And I do think, if it's true, if Barry did kill his wife, and Barry's saying God allowed that to happen, and it was in God's hands, that is telling you something about how how mercenary is with, like, no, you wouldn't imagine many people would speak about God in this way, let alone a murderer. Now suddenly, what God did, let's say you committed a crime, and now you make it something that God did, and so you must leave it alone because God's a lot more powerful than you, and so don't even go there. It's revealing, I think, a lot about a potential super ego, a lot about a potential, and I mean, it's bullshit. I mean, God, I don't think, doesn't allow people to be murdered. You know what I mean? I don't think God's like, okay. So, the whole thing is really kind of misappropriating things in a way to benefit himself. You know what I'm saying? To see what you guys say here. Nisi says, do you feel the God card seems to be used often in true crime? Absolutely. It was the first case I really went into was Oscar Pistorius, and he definitely used that a lot. His family members as well. In fact, when he was about to be sentenced, he said something along the lines of that he believed that Reva, the woman that he murdered, Reva was looking down from heaven and saying, you know what, I don't think Oscar should go to jail for murder, something like that. And ultimately he did. But that's what he was saying. Basically, that kind of this whole thing of I can speak on behalf of a dead person, someone that I actually killed. Take my word for it, kind of thing. It's very it's I don't know what the word is. It's almost like the way that you treat an object. You have an object and you possess the object, and then you can throw the object away, but then you can also retrieve it from the trash. It's treating a person like an object which you can totally control. You can totally speak for the object. You can change the object in a way that totally suits you, in a way that is almost like you're a god in that situation. You are so all-powerful. And the weird thing with Oscar and Barry is that they're actually very insecure men. They got this incredible machismo, they seem very egotistical, there's a lot of sort of macho posturing. I think Oscar was also a hunter. Oscar was also very into guns and things. You saw all the guns in Barry's safe, right? And I think a lot of that is in a way to try and bolster actually a sense of insecurity in a way, with some people, with some men. The bigger my gun, the bigger my car, the more of a man I am, kind of thing. It's almost a what do you call it, a metaphor. I'm not saying it's somebody's like sitting down and thinking of it this way, but it's almost a metaphor for the actual genital, where you say, well, look at my gun. It's a really long gun. It's a really deadly gun. I'm a deadly man. I'm a young gun and I'm a deadly. You look at my car. I'm this big roaring man, kind of thing. It's kind of, that's what's kind of going on. Why do you need to do that? Nisi says, such an abuse of religion. Yeah. I'm trying to think whether he would take the Bible into court with him, but you do get quite a few people who do that, who do literally bring a Bible into court with him. And there's kind of this sense of, how dare you judge me, meaning a situation where you're going to court and the judge is going to judge you. Only God can judge me. Oh, okay. And I think that did catch on quite a long time ago, where people said, How dare you judge somebody before it's gone to trial? It's not your place to do that. Look how far the true crime community has come since then. That whole thing where you don't think about someone who may have done something wrong plays into the hands of those people doing those things wrong. You might say, no, you shouldn't judge. Well, you're allowed to think about somebody. You're allowed to think whether what they're saying or what they're doing is suspicious. You don't necessarily, like what we're doing here, you're not necessarily saying that person's guilty, but you are saying this doesn't really make sense, does it? Kind of thing, right? Okay, I think there's just one paragraph left here. Holly said if she had told Barry before Suzanne's disappearance that Suzanne was detaching from him, he would have reacted in the same defensive way. Barry said, no, I would have sat my wife down and had a heart-to-heart about it. He adds, he would not have been upset. Do you think that's true? Do you think Barry would not be upset if Suzanne said she was detaching? It's quite an interesting word, detach. Instead of leave or divorce, detach. It's quite an interesting word. And let me just ask you guys, do you think that Suzanne had become detached from Barry? Do you think Suzanne had felt detached based on the text messages we've seen, based on literally what was going on? Do you think Suzanne was detaching from him? Stephanie says he'd be fuming. Barry later said, and I was afraid that talking to the FBI, and when we talked about the situation, and they said she could have left on her own, I said the only reason she would leave is because she wouldn't have me hounding her about her problems. And she was free to drink, free to drug, and do all of that. So it's quite interesting. The one aspect that he doesn't really acknowledge is that maybe Suzanne wanted to be with another person, not with substances, but with another person, someone that she liked and that treated her in a different way to what he did. But he makes it very, like she wanted to leave him in order to drink. So that brings us to section 6, Barry's interviews with the FBI in 2021. I just wanted to use this testimony or this witness statement from Holly just to show you some powerful recordings and statements Barry said in his own words that add, I think, some meat to this case as well. So you can actually imagine that Holly's recordings and what Holly found out actually made the police think, wow, we need to work this guy some more. We need to ask him some more questions. There's more that we can do here, kind of thing. Nisi says to think she'd leave him for alcohol shows his gargantuan ego. Terry says when she said she couldn't care less about what he's been up to, I 100% believe that. Detaching, that is that. Yeah, okay. So here we go to Barry's statements. It says here, this section includes summaries of audio and video recorded interviews by the FBI of Barry after he was informed of Suzanne's affair. So what this really is the police tell Barry, you know what, your wife's been having an affair. Now, what does Barry say about that? Barry's got to account for that, right? It kind of puts Barry in a bad light and kind of an awkward light. Now he's got to account for, was there something wrong with your marriage? If there's something wrong with your marriage, is there something wrong with you? Are you this nice guy? Are you this perfect husband? Right? So what I find quite interesting is I think some of the earlier interviews were only audio recorded. These are video recorded. If you look through the affidavit, there are actually quite a few screen grabs and photos of Barry taken from kind of weird angles, sometimes under the table, but you kind of see Barry in various settings, and obviously the authorities feel that his demeanor, and that was very interesting, which is why they recorded it. I'm meaning photos of him in all these different settings. So let's go through that. Remember, these interviews followed Agent Cahill saying something like, it's totally premature to arrest Barry right now. I think he was right. I think given what they discovered from Holly, it would make sense to speak to Barry some more. I don't think that equates to that they didn't have enough evidence. I think they already knew quite a lot. This was just tightening in the screws kind of thing. Also, I don't think, and I think the defense made this case, that I don't think saying you're making a big mistake arresting Barry isn't the same as the officer or the agent saying, I don't think he should be charged, just the timing of it. So to make the case that that means I don't think this guy committed a crime is, to me, a little bit mischievous. You playing with semantics. Technically, that is what he said, but that isn't what he meant in terms of the context. He wasn't saying we shouldn't arrest Barry. He was saying we shouldn't arrest Barry now, if that makes sense. Anyway, January 27, 2021. In this interview, Barry stated numerous times he had no idea of the affair, and he asked multiple times to know who her lover was. Now, what's quite important with this is, do you know about, like in any scenario where it's a husband, a wife, and a third party, and then somebody disappears. The Chris Watts case is a good example. It's very important to find out, was there an affair, was there infidelity? But secondly, who knew about it? Because knowing about an affair is something that loads the dynamic. It loads it with tension and anxiety and potentially motive, right? And the question is, did that occur here? So first of all, whether Barry knew about the affair or not, did the affair load the dynamic to a sufficient extent? I'm not asking you to answer that. I'm just asking you to think about that. To influence motive. Think about it almost in a reverse way with Chris Watts. Chris Watts managed to keep his affair secret from Shanann, but there were times where Shanann was like, well, I haven't heard from you all night. Why have you been so distant? And then she kind of confused two things. The one was Nutgate, and the other thing was that he was unhappy about the third pregnancy. And she kind of, if Nutgate didn't happen, she probably would have realized much sooner that it was an affair that was going on. She did think about could be an affair, but she thought he's just not the kind of guy capable of having an affair. He's just too passive and weak and under her control. You know, he's not the kind of guy who would do that. But what she underestimated was the mistress's resolve, the mistress's ability to, I guess, give him confidence. And also the fact that he changed. He'd become a lot more good looking, and that, I guess, had an impact to some extent on her and on him. He had become a little bit less introverted. But think about it from the perspective of Chris Watts. Didn't he commit the murder because Shanann was about to find out that he was having an affair, and he was having an affair? She just found out about that charge at the Lazy Dog, right? What was the other thing? And he couldn't handle being confronted about this given everything that was going on, that she was a social media maven, that she the way that she reacted to Nutgate, how would she react to an affair? And she was pregnant. So the question is just here, did Chris Watts kill Shanann in order to keep his affair a secret, in order also to keep the affair, right? So to what extent did an affair in the Chris Watts case lead to murder? Well, I think we'll all agree that it played a huge role. And I've been working on a video on Nicole Kessinger, just saying, I'm going to get back to the Barry Morphew case in a second. But even Nicole Kessinger said that she felt that people are going to think that she drove him to it. And in a sense, that is what happened, in the sense that he so desperately wanted to be with her that he felt justified in doing what he did. He felt desperately in love, kind of thing. Well, someone can be desperately in love with somebody else and you the odd one out, and you don't like that. Is that what could have happened in this case? So he initially guessed her lover lived in Arizona, where he was telling Suzanne he wanted to go on Friday, May 8th, and said that maybe Suzanne's disappearance was a form of God's judgment for the affair. Once again, using that kind of analogy, I guess. Think of those words. God judges Suzanne for her affair. First of all, isn't he having an affair? Affairs. Question, I don't know if he is, but if he is having affairs and she is killed because she's having an affair, so I could have lots and lots of affairs and it's fine and God's happy with that. But if my wife has an affair, God is righteous and God is right to kill her. It's a pretty chauvinistic view of oneself and of somebody else in that situation. Also, wow, so somebody has an affair, they should be put to death. I mean, which country are we living in? In a weird way, with Nicole Kessinger, there is this terrible vitriol against her, where you almost do get the sense that people feel, not that someone's got to be put to death, but that someone must be punished terribly for having an affair. And yet, if you look at the stats, I don't know if it's 1 out of every 2 marriages end in divorce in America. I don't know what the rates are, but it's very high. So should half of those people be? It's just absurd. And yet you've got someone thinking this way, and also communicating it to somebody else, even communicating it to law enforcement. Special Agent Grusing and Special Agent Harris met with Barry at his condo in Poncha Springs, Colorado. So this is where he's living now. I think at this point he'd already sold the Puma Path home, I think for, 1.5 million, 1.6 million. And now he's staying in a condo. And they wanted to inform him of the affair. Upon meeting Barry, as he was walking behind his house and telling him agents needed to speak with him privately, he said, "Oh, I'm working right now. Can I get your number?" So he doesn't really want to talk to them. He eventually agreed to speak with the agent, so they've got to kind of twist his arm. After being informed Suzanne had an affair, Barry asked who the person was and how long the affair had been going on. And then he said, "This is a complete surprise to me. I've had no idea of this and would never suspect her of doing this." He later said, "Because I never seen it on her phone." How was she? Special Agent Grusing asked if Barry remembered her handing him her phone in Mexico, that he was trying to see who she was talking to. Barry said, "Yeah, wasn't in her phone, Snapchat?" Barry said, "I can assure you I had no idea there was another man." These are all quotes that that law enforcement feel are applicable. These are all quotes that they feel are relevant. Obviously, he said a lot of other things. These are the ones they are highlighting, which is Barry's kind of pleading ignorance. So his wife's murdered. Barry says God judged her if she had an affair. That's why she's dead. And he's saying, I didn't know she was having an affair. But did he? Also, did he know who, if he did know, did he know who she was having the affair with? What do you guys think? First of all, do you think Barry was having, do you think that Barry knew she was having an affair? And number two, do you think Barry knew who she was having an affair with? Nisi says, affairs become a deadly tit for tat. I think when you have a married couple and both are having affairs, the tit for tat gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And you really kind of got to ask yourself, why are you guys married to one another? Both of you. Why is X married to Y? Also, why is Y married to X? If you're both having affairs, why are you actually married? Why? Why do you want to be married? And I don't think you end there. You should actually try and answer the question. Why do people stay married when they're not actually very happy? I think there's an answer to that. Part of it is they're caught in kind of a money trap in a way, or they feel like they are. I think Chris Watts felt like he was. And what's the easy way out of that money trap? Barry said, I had no idea they were communicating. And if you guys are trying to tell me that I found out about this and did something, that's completely wrong. It's quite interesting. If you guys are trying to tell me that I found out about this and did something, that's completely wrong. Special Agent Grusing said that Suzanne's and her lover's communication stopped Saturday afternoon. That is pretty big. That's pretty big. So, if you're trying to make the case that Suzanne just disappeared, that Suzanne ran away, that Suzanne was abducted, that she's still out there, whatever, it's quite interesting that both of their communications just stopped. One thing that I think is quite interesting with Jeff Libler is Jeff also didn't know what happened to Suzanne, meaning Jeff didn't know that, could it have been a mountain lion? Could it have been she fell and hurt herself on the bicycle? Could it have been that she ran away? What do you think Jeff actually thought? Do you think Jeff suspected or imagined or understood or kind of theorized that Barry found out? What do you think Jeff's version of, wow, Suzanne's just stopped communicating with me? What do you think that was? What do you think Jeff thought that happened to Suzanne? Nisi says, Heather, welcome, Heather. Money, children, society, view of them is strong as well. Do you see what I'm getting at? What I'm trying to say is, what do you think Jeff believed had happened? Because he also just stopped communicating. He didn't communicate the next day. Why are you not getting back to me? Are you okay? The fact that he just stopped communicating suggests that he knew something or that he suspected something very strongly, right? And if you think about it, Nicole Kessinger, I think, suspected something strongly and she was right. Jeff also suspected something. Is he right? Barry said, well, I was with Suzanne. I came home to have lunch, went into town to get the blade on my bobcat fixed, and I had the wrong timeline on that. So if she was talking to this individual, it had to be when I came into Salida. Now, I mentioned this to you guys. I said it's critically important when Barry came home, meaning did he actually catch Suzanne? Bear in mind there's 57 LinkedIn messages, 57 or 59, but anyway, a lot. why am I thinking about the page numbers here? But there were a lot of these LinkedIn messages in 2 hours, right? And so did Barry actually kind of catch Suzanne in the act, taking selfies, flirting, whatever? And that's kind of this decisive moment. The question is, when did he arrive home? And he actually says here, I came home to have lunch, which would suggest you're not going to come home at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock to have lunch. You're going to come home closer to 1 or 2 o'clock. And that last selfie was sent at around about 2 o'clock. So did Barry see it? The other thing that's interesting is, besides him admitting I came home to have lunch, which is giving you an idea that it's in the middle of the day, not he didn't say, I finished work and went home in the afternoon. Hey, Sharon, good to see you. Stephanie says 59 in one morning. That's right. It's actually 59 in 2 hours, I think between 12 and 2. That's a lot of activity. What I find very interesting is the juxtaposition. He talks about, I came home to have lunch, then I left home and I went into town to get the blade on my bobcat fixed. Why does he do that day? I don't know whether he definitely did do that, but we do know that there were like fresh screws on the bobcat. Why does the blade of this bobcat need to be fixed then and there? And just think of what we're talking about. The blade of a bobcat is meant to dig into earth. It's meant to break earth apart. Get what I'm saying? Think about what a blade does, whether you're talking about a knife or a construction equipment. Get what I'm saying? So he goes home. We know what Suzanne was doing. Did he catch her doing something? Did he take her phone? I've already made the statement that it's possible someone shot her with a tranquilizer dart, not as part of like, I want to murder you. It was actually to paralyze her in order to be able to look at her phone and have some time to absorb the contents of that phone, right? And then that could, once you see what the contents actually are, then you take an action. All of that is addressing this question, did somebody know she was having an affair? So she's having an affair with someone, and then did that person find out who she was having an affair with? And then did something happen? And I mean, that is exactly what Barry's saying here. If you guys are trying to tell me that I found out about this and did something, that's completely wrong. That's exactly what we are wondering. She also says, if she was talking to this individual, it had to be when I came into Salida. It's quite interesting that he's emphasizing this. So we know that she was talking to this individual, but couldn't it have been when he came home? Remember, she starts that conversation saying, guess who's not here, or something like that. I can't remember the exact words. Guess who's, I think she says, guess who's home alone, or something. Guess who's something, I don't know. Maybe if I quickly go back to that. I don't want to lose my place here, but what does she say? Guess who's... let me ask you guys. Maybe you know the answer. Didi Marie, following this case, thank you for all your information. I live 2 hours from Salida. Okay. Let me just see if I can find that. It just means I've got to jump right out of this. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, it's not, the texts aren't part of this. Texts aren't part of this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I'm now on page 19. I just want to, she says, I'm on WhatsApp. Oh, guess who's alone again? That's what she sent. She sent this to Jeff Libler at 11:42 in the morning. Guess who's alone again? Question mark, question mark. That was on May 9th. And then she has a 2-hour, almost 2.5-hour conversation with him. And it sort of ends with her saying, I'm on WhatsApp. And the point of that was that they could share video with each other. And it's kind of a similar situation, I think, with Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger. They have a 111-minute conversation. There's sexting going on, there's texts and so on, and then all those messages disappear. Jeff says that they didn't WhatsApp that time or later that day. One wonders whether they did. One wonders whether they did actually WhatsApp and Barry saw that. In other words, saw what was going on, and also perhaps heard something. I'm speculating. The question just is, there's a part to this that we don't know about. Is this that missing piece? Okay, so guess who's alone again? The issue is, did she know when she wasn't alone anymore? When Barry arrived home, did she know that he was home? What do you think? Okay, so we just passed the hour mark. I kind of want to make some progress now in this. Just look at some of your comments. Guess who's not home? No, guess who's alone again? Terry says, the truck, long driveway, she would have known he was coming and hid her phone, but he found it. Okay. Special Agent Harris told Barry that Suzanne was communicating with the individual on some occasions while Barry was in the house. This is pretty important. Barry was told that Suzanne was communicating with Jeff sometimes when Barry was in the house. Now, if you think about this from Suzanne's perspective, and given where we are today, you can think about how dangerous that was. Barry asked, where is this guy from? Arizona. It's quite interesting that he doesn't ask what's his name. That would be my first question. Anyway, Special Agent Grussing told Barry hundreds of communications existed between Suzanne and this person, especially on Saturday before Barry came home, just before 3 o'clock. So Barry asked, can you tell me how many months it's been going on? Special Agent Grussing said Barry could probably answer that himself. Quite an interesting comment there. Barry said, well, I can't answer that on the way she treated me, because she didn't treat me like she wanted to leave me. Remember, he's been saying that they kind of had this perfect relationship. They also had the perfect night, the night before she disappeared. Special Agent Grussing told Barry about the recording pen and the conversation when Barry asked Suzanne to tell him if she loved him. Barry asked Suzanne to tell him if she loved him, and she could not answer that she loved him. Barry was asked if he remembered that. Barry was shaking his head side to side to signal no. So it seems like when Barry's caught out, or when Barry is put not in a very good light, then he's quite quiet. Isn't answer no, he just shakes his head. And then he said, yeah, I remember, and then he began to cry. And this is in the context of being asked, did Suzanne actually love you? Did she say she loved you? So first he denied it, and then he said he remembered it, and then he started crying. Why do you think he's crying? Do you think he's crying because of the tension of the relationship and I want to be loved by my wife? Or do you think he's crying because after everything he's now kind of been found out that he's in trouble? What do you think it is? And so at the top of page 61, there's a photo of Barry wearing like a kind of a beanie, and his mouth is really like this. I don't know. And quite a interesting photo of Barry. Anyway, it says, Barry said, she's always been insecure because she didn't have a father. He left, was a drunk. When we were dating, insecure that I'm cheating, I'm having an affair. When we're married and I got a secretary, that I'm having an affair with her. You can go back through my whole entire life. I've never even touched, let alone talked or text to another woman besides my wife. You'll never find that. So he makes this very strong statement, and I have said this before. Barry can be very, very convinced, very sure of himself, very adamant, and then on certain things. So he can be incredibly not rigid, but he can be very certain, and then something else he just has no idea. Like he can't remember the last time he saw Suzanne. If you think about what he says here, you can go back through my whole entire life. I've never even touched another woman. Well, what about Holly's breasts? He says, let alone talks or text. But it's like, it's a little bit of a strange thing to say, like, I've never spoken to another woman besides my wife. Well, you were in your vehicle with Morgan Gentile the day. It's just a very universal, it's a very big statement to make, and then it's just not true even in a basic way. I know what he's saying, I didn't touch a woman in that way, but it's still not, it's such a global statement to make. Do you get what I'm saying? Barry asked to guess who Suzanne's lover was and said, it's either David Huff or Kevin Stout. Am I right? We just say that again. Barry asked to guess who Suzanne's lover was and said, it's either David Huff or Kevin Stout. Am I right? Again, do you think that he actually knew who it was? Do you think if he knew who it was, he would say, could it be Jeff Libler? If you put yourself in Barry's shoes, if you said, okay, the police are investigating this, they want to know if I knew. Okay, so who do I think he was having an affair with? Oh, could it be this guy or that guy? Would it be in your best interest to say who the person was? What do you think? Terry says flip-flops from defensive to confident. Okay, so agents did not confirm, so they didn't say who she was having the affair with, and Barry began to talk about Suzanne possibly being in the river. It's quite a jump there. Wow. Anyway, Special Agent Grissing asked, the river from an accident or an abduction? Barry said, either one. I don't think it, the way I see it, it was an accident, and she ran from somebody to the river. So let me ask you guys, do you think Barry's saying, I think Suzanne's in the river? Do you think she was in the river? Madeline Jimenez, good to have you here. Stephanie says, no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't say who he thought. Good point. So Barry's kind of talking about Suzanne being in the river. Do you think Suzanne is in the river? Yeah, it's a good point. From the bike to the river. So in that, Barry's kind of seems to be acknowledging that the whole bike thing is irrelevant. Does that make sense? So him saying, you know what, I actually think Suzanne's in the river, does in a way kind of, even Barry is saying, I don't think that the bike thing is relevant, that it's either staged or it's not important enough to say, that's where she should be, kind of thing. Barry was asked if he found out something about Suzanne on Saturday or if someone else was involved. So this is quite a on-the-chin question. Barry, did you find out something about Suzanne on Saturday? Barry shook his head. Now remember what I said. When Barry seems to be caught out, it seems like he doesn't say anything. He doesn't verbalize. He's just quiet. And so he shakes his head and then he says, there's nothing that I found out Saturday about her having an affair, nothing. That's also words that Chris Watts used, something about, he said, he arrived home and there was nothing. There was no one. Remember, but he used the words, there's nothing. And I wonder whether those words, there's nothing, kind of refers to, well, someone used to be around, someone used to be alive, and now there's nothing. Their clothing is gone, they're gone, and any evidence of them is gone. That's what there's nothing refers to. Anyway, he says, there's nothing. It seems to be he's talking about there's nothing that I found out Saturday means there's no evidence that I found out Saturday. Nothing. Do you agree? That is answering that by saying there's no evidence. Special Agent Grissing asked if he found out Friday or Saturday if she was having an affair. So earlier we kind of had that thing where Barry was saying he didn't know about an affair. Now the agent's asking not whether he knew, but when he knew. Did you find out Friday or Saturday? Barry said, I've already told you this. This is the first day that I found out she had an affair. He's saying, I'm only finding this out now. Barry doesn't seem very upset. He wants to talk about the river. It's not like Barry's really upset finding this out now. Anyway, he says, this is the first day that I found out she had an affair. You researched the lady. She's an angel. She's a saint. This just blows my mind, and it's going to blow anybody's mind to find this out. Now, if you take those words, she's an angel, she's a saint, but he's been saying that God would judge her in the way that he did. It's very black and white, even the way he sees himself. Doesn't he see himself as an angel? Doesn't he see himself as a saint? But look at the words that he uses here. Blows my mind. Blow anybody's mind. Let's go on. Now we're on page 62. There's another photo of Barry. Seems like it's pretty cold. He's wearing kind of a pretty heavy jacket. Obviously, this is all caught on video. He added, and as soon as they find out, they're going to say, old hothead Barry found out and killed his wife. And so here he seems to be acknowledging that people perceive him as a hothead. He seems to be confirming that there's this impression of him as someone who can get really angry and lose their temper, right? Let's look at some of your comments. He's pointing away from the actual place, 2 fingers pointing in 2 different places. His emotions don't jive with the man in love. Yeah. So you would imagine if he had found out for the first time that his wife's having an affair, that there would be, and his wife disappeared, that there would be something like shock, disappointment, I can tell you on my 50th birthday, I found out something about a long ago girlfriend, and I was pretty glum, not glum, but yeah, I guess it was a bit, it put a bit of a dampener on the whole evening. And I've kind of been thinking about it since then as well. And you don't just sort of snap out of it unless you've known about it for a long time. It's something that you absorb, sort of painful news. And the fact that Barry kind of wants to talk about the river and is fairly, for someone who seems to be quite a emotional person, he seems fairly like he's absorbed it quite well, quite quickly. But is that the way we know Barry? It's interesting his word here. As soon as they find out, they're going to say. But just think about those words. As soon as find out, Hothead Barry killed his wife, and then he says found out again. He repeats this idea of finding out and found out and killing. Do you find something out and then that happens? Special Agent Grissing, you have the same situation with Chris Watts and Shanann Watts and Nicole Kessinger of finding out, someone finding something out and killing. In other words, isn't the crime taking place to prevent something from being found out? There's also other aspects, money and so on, but it's also being found out in a certain way. Special Agent Grissing told Barry about the May 6th text where Suzanne said, I'm done, let's just handle this civilly. Barry was working and his responses were that life was not worth living and going to meet my savior, and life is a mere grain of sand compared to eternity. Think about that. Life's just a grain of sand compared to eternity, and thinking about somebody else's life. Oh, you know what? If you die, it's not such a big deal. You're going to eternity. Your death, your life isn't such a big deal. Okay. Barry said, yeah, and I was just trying to hurt her. That was all I was doing. I would never have killed myself with my daughters. I don't know if you remember with Chris Watts when he was confronted. I think he was saying this to it wasn't to Coda. I think he said something like, I hurt her emotionally. Do you remember that? He was sort of accused of harming Shanann after he had kind of confessed that she'd hurt the kids, and then he said, no. I hurt her emotionally. Do you remember that? So yeah, you have Barry saying, I was just trying to hurt her. That's all I was doing. I would never have killed myself with my daughters. But he's also just trying to say, all I did was I hurt her emotionally. It's also quite interesting that he does say, I would never have killed myself with my daughters. And then take that and a scenario where you see Barry going into court with his daughters on both of his arms, right? Special Agent Grissing told Barry that investigators noted Suzanne did not tell Barry not to commit suicide. Suzanne didn't tell Barry not to commit suicide. So what they're kind of saying there is Barry threatens to commit suicide in his messages. Suzanne doesn't say, please don't. You kind of get the idea that she thinks Barry's full of it, right? Terry says the birds need their own channel. I must say, looking out doesn't look like it's raining anymore. I just saw it drop now, but it doesn't really look like it's raining anymore. I wonder if, I suppose it could start raining again. It is pretty grey out there. Stephanie says, not just, oh, it must be someone in Arizona, not much of a reaction for a spouse. He said he would never stray to find out they are having an affair. So this says she knows his mind games. Does seem like a bit of a mind game. Special Agent Grissing has now mentioned that Suzanne didn't tell Barry not to commit suicide. Barry said, I know. Well, it makes perfect sense now why. Back then, it didn't to me. I would want her to say, no, don't hurt yourself, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it didn't come. Barry said, I appreciate it, but I want you to know that I've been a Christian my whole entire life. I accepted the Lord. I love the Lord. And he knows why this happened, and I got to trust him. I have to trust that he did this for a reason. He added, I'm telling you, I have no idea of this until today. But looking at everything right now, things are making a little bit more sense to me from God's point of view. Think of those words the way he says, wow, things are making more sense to me from God's point of view. He seems to see himself in a weird way as God. He can speak on God's behalf. Possibly he does something, then he says God did it, or God let it happen. Anyway, he says, I would never understand why God could take away my wife. Do you think God took away his wife or somebody else? He says, after I fought 2 battles of cancer with her, had 2 miracle babies that we shouldn't have had a wonderful life together. That's quite a past tense sort of way of talking as well. We had a wonderful life together. But I guess by December you would have, even if he was innocent, you would think that way. We had a wonderful life together. I don't know if Suzanne thought so. Barry continued, I can promise you that I knew none of this until today. Barry said she never talked Saturday to me about leaving. I mean, did you find communication between her and I Saturday about that? Because to me, it's quite interesting him saying, did you find communication between her and I about that? It's quite interesting. It's like either he did communicate that and he wants to know, do you know about that? Or, I mean, why on earth would he ask that question if he didn't communicate about that? He says, because to me, Saturday was a good day. We had a good evening together. Friday, we had an argument on the phone. Friday, I'm sure you've seen that. Special Agent Grissing told Barry that for some reason, it seems he's placing Wednesday as Friday. Barry said, oh. Terry says he knew he had deleted it. He's digging for info from them. So look at that question. Did you find communication between her and I? Did you find communication between her and I Saturday about that? Now we go to page 63. Special Agent Grissing reminded Barry that it was Wednesday when Suzanne said she was done. Barry said, oh, okay. Then that was Wednesday, not Friday. Friday, she would go through these times where we would fight like that and then everything would be back to normal. And it was like nothing ever happened. And we'd go eat dinner. We'd go have home. We'd have sex. Everything would be fine. It's quite interesting also the way he seems to see if you have sex with someone, everything's fine. Sex means everything's fine. Sex with someone else means everything's not fine, but, right? If you imagine a scenario where let's say there are 3 people, Fred, Lisa, and John, right? No, let's make it Fred, Lisa, and Sarah. Fred and Lisa are married, right? Fred and Lisa are married. Fred's having an affair with, who did I say? Sarah. Fred and Sarah are kind of having an affair. They're having sex. And then Lisa kind of gets a bit upset and concerned, it's raining again. But if Fred has sex with Lisa, then their marriage is fine. Then Fred can go back to Sarah. Does that make sense? In other words, if I have sex with someone else and the person closest to me gets worried, if I just have sex with her, that means she thinks we're still kind of in it and it's still, everything's fine. And that's all I've got to do. right? Does that make sense? I'm just saying it's kind of a very reptilian way of thinking about the complexities of relationships and how people hearts actually work. But maybe as a man, maybe you might think that's all it is. Nisi says he thinks he's the smartest in the room. Terry says contempt. Okay. It is a pretty minimizing way of thinking about another person. That if I'm having sex with you means all is well with your world. If I'm, but if you're having sex with someone else, that's absolutely unacceptable. S.A. Grusing told Barry that investigators have a fuller picture of his actions in Broomfield. So this is now adding a different dimension to it. Barry said, I told to Joe and Derek everything, and just think about how he's stuttering there, but not only that, he's not actually speaking in a grammatical way. He says, I told to Joe and Derek everything. And Joe's like, well, why are you going to 5 different trash cans and throwing all kinds of crap away? Now just think about that. Barry's volunteering that. Barry's volunteering that he knows, but also that they know that he's gone to these different trash cans. Why are you throwing all kinds of crap away? And he said, I've done that my whole entire life. That's another thing that he's been saying over and over again, whole entire life. And he's kind of under a bit of duress here. They're sort of attacking him, they're undermining him, they're confronting him, and he keeps making these global statements, whole entire life. He says, my truck is a mess. I throw things away here and there because I'm a tightwad and I don't want to pay for trash pickup or this or that, or I had time, that I was going to have more time, spend more time on that wall that day. But when I got to it and realized that my workers were going to come and I could just have them do this stuff, I had time on my hands. Footnote 57 reads, Barry's story that he had time on his hands after working on the wall contradicts his 5 trash runs on May 10th, 4 of which occurred before he went to the wall, then finished with his walk across the hotel parking lot. So he's saying he had a lot of time on his hands, that's why he went to do these trash runs, but he was actually seemed to be rushing to get to the hotel, and on the way to the hotel did the trash runs, as I understand it. Special Agent Grusing asked Barry about coming home on Saturday after errands and whether he remembered where Suzanne was when he got home. I've already mentioned this. Bear in mind, there are parts of this affidavit I haven't even gotten to myself, but I've been mentioning this over and over again. It's critical when Barry actually got home on Saturday. It's critical when he got home, what time he got home, also what he saw when he got home, what he heard, and what then resulted from that. So anyway, Special Agent Grusing is asking now about that. Do you remember where Suzanne was when you got home? No, he doesn't. Oh, you don't remember where she was. You arrived home. This is the last day you saw her. You don't remember where she was. Okay. Special Agent Grusing asked if she could have been out on the deck. Wow. Wasn't she out on the deck? Wasn't she out on the deck suntanning? Wasn't she out on the deck texting? Wasn't she out on the deck possibly without her top on? Bear in mind she was in a bikini. Wasn't she out on the deck, right? Barry said, I don't remember. And yeah, again, he's shaking his head side to side before answering. Remember, I've said already where he seems to not talk, he seems to be non-verbal. Barry's quite a loud, brash dude. So when he's not verbal, you kind of get the sense that Barry is a bit taken aback, that he's a bit shocked, that his heart might be beating or something. could he be caught out? Is that what makes him like that, or what? What's kind of going on? You do kind of get the sense that he gets quite emotional or anxious compared to, let's say, Chris Watts, where it's sort of outwardly evident. Anyway, so here he has he's shaking his head side to side. He's being asked quite a serious and seriously important question. Suddenly he's non-verbal again, and of course he doesn't remember. It's a very pointed and time-critical question, and look at how he responds. Why can't it just be a relaxed, I don't really remember, I think she was doing the washing, or, instead it's pretty fraught. He says, I do not recall, which is like lawyer language, I do not recall where she was when I got home. Oh, okay. I don't even remember going to town and doing that. And so in that one sentence, he says, I don't remember 3 times. The thing that is a bit strange is in a situation that, let's say, is innocent, wouldn't you, and it's kind of a simple question, where was someone when you arrived home? Wouldn't you speculate? Wouldn't you say, I think they were in the kitchen. I think they were in the bedroom. I think they were by their computer. I think they were in the lounge. Barry doesn't even speculate. He doesn't remember at all. He doesn't say, I think she was outside, I think she was inside. He doesn't go there at all. Now think about you, if you were asked, if you think about the last time you arrived home, where was someone? You could speculate quite confidently based on their habits and kind of based on your memory. Does that make sense? It wouldn't be something where you just would have no idea. Why would you have absolutely no idea? Also, it's the last time he kind of ever sees her, right? It's the last thing they do in the afternoon. That kind of stuff is burned in your memory, right? When I was 17 years old, the last time I saw my mother, I can tell you exactly. I was lying in bed in my bedroom, and the door was sort of closed, and she opened the door. You couldn't see, but she sort of peeked around the door and said, I'm taking your sister to church. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember that last moment. I never saw her again after that. So I remember what she said. I remember where she said it. I remember how she said it. I remember exactly where it happened. Terry Dean says, there are a lot of underlying parallels to so many other cases you so diligently decipher. I thoroughly enjoy and appreciate your time and talents. Thanks a lot. Thanks for that. So I'm just saying, not only does he not remember, and he emphasizes that 3 times, he doesn't attempt to remember. And is that because he doesn't want to remember? Why on earth would you not just volunteer? I think she was somewhere. Why wouldn't you do that? Special Agent Grusing told investigators that investigators have some images to show him. Barry said of that she sent to this guy. Special Agent Grusing confirmed and said that it might be the last time outside of Barry that she's seen by someone else alive. It's quite interesting that the agent is saying these words, that outside of Barry, it's perhaps the last time she's seen alive. Barry said, I'm telling you right now, there was nothing out of the normal Saturday afternoon, nothing. It was almost like this is Barry being absolutely adamant. So 1 minute he can't remember. I can't remember, it's like very vague. He even says here, I don't even remember going to town, right? I don't even remember, but he's saying he went to town. Anyway, so there Barry's being very vague and very sort of not very hands-on. And then here he's extremely kind of hands-on. He's got a lot of detail here. He says, that evening, nothing ever happened. What? It's almost like that evening, nothing ever happened to us that week. She's like one person one day another person the other day. Do you think he's describing her or somebody else? And when she acts like that, I'm going to accept it and take it all in, because when she's distant and cold, I don't get any affection. Now you're getting a big statement from Barry just in terms of this idea of the last time she was seen alive, right? The special agent simply mentioned something about the last time she's been seen alive, and suddenly you get this big verbal diarrhea. Let me just read the whole thing in one go. He says, I'm telling you right now, there's nothing out of the normal Saturday afternoon. Nothing. It's almost like that evening, nothing ever happened to us that week. She's like one person one day, another person the other day. When she acts like that, I'm going to accept it and take it all in, because when she's distant and cold, I don't get any affection. And Saturday, there was no problems, none. And I don't understand that you're telling me that she's communicating with this guy Saturday all day. I'm working till noon, come home, eat lunch with her, leave again and come home and then spend the evening with her, eat supper with her, have sex with her. I can assure you that Saturday night was a good night for us. And I can assure you that we made love that night. And there's no way that she would have done that to me if she's got this head on about this other guy. Again, he's using kind of sex as a way to say everything's fine. Special Agent Grussing said that Suzanne was disclosing things about her love life to the other guy. Barry said, well, I'm sure if she's not disclosing things about having sex with her lover, Barry made air quotes with his hands while saying this, her lover, because that would upset him. So she's probably lying to him if she's saying we're not having sex, because we do, and we did. She's making a big deal about them sleeping together. And I can assure you that that night we did, 100%. This is Barry being totally adamant. 100%. And February, when I went to meet her in Florida, that's all it was sex. You know, he's very, very adamant. He can remember that, but he can't remember where she was. You know, he's very, very adamant about certain things and then very, very unclear about others. He says, I mean, why would she do that to me if she's got this other guy that she's leaving me for? None of this is making sense. Special Agent Grussing asked what doesn't make sense to Barry, adding that Barry said earlier things were making sense. That's a fantastic point. So, you know, Barry said, you know, this is starting to make sense. And what did he say about God? He said, things are making a little bit more sense to me from God's point of view, because I would never understand why God could take away my wife. Now he's saying none of it makes sense. Oh, so to the agent's credit, Barry says, oh no, this is only making sense in God's eyes. Why someone like me, someone like us? It's giving you a kind of a sense that Barry does seem to think quite a lot of himself. Why someone like me? Well, now that you told me that she was having an affair, maybe, I don't know, maybe in God's eyes, this was his way of resolving something. I don't know. Barry stated, that's just why I said it's making sense to me with God's relationship. None of this, I'm telling you that there's nothing that I knew about. I knew I had texts where I said, yeah, you're having an affair, you're having a boyfriend. I just did that to reciprocate what you were saying to me. In other words, it's almost like saying, I didn't really suspect you of having an affair because you suspected me of having an affair. So he's saying he didn't really think she was having an affair, and she didn't really think, I guess, he was having an affair. It was just the sort of tit-for-tat word game. Meanwhile, the fact is Suzanne's missing, likely dead, possibly murdered. Do you think that's because she was having an affair or because she wasn't? Do you think it's because possibly he was having an affair or he wasn't? Barry said, yeah, I remember that, but I didn't mean it. I was just saying that to try to get her. Barry talked about striking Suzanne once when he clipped her nose, but that was the only time he was physically abusive. So right here within this, it seems like he volunteers that he actually clipped her nose. And he says, it's the only time I was physically abusive. So he seems to be acknowledging that he was physically abusive, but just once. And so it's almost like the agents are trying to ask him, what is wrong with your marriage? And trying to confront him that they know that things weren't that great. And now he kind of admits, yes, okay, I did hit her once. But he's still kind of minimizing. He's sort of giving them a little bit more, but saying, no, it's not, I didn't do all of that, but I did do this little bit and that, right? And as Stephanie says, is that all? It sounds perfect. She was this amazing, it was this amazing marriage, right? Special Agent Grusing said that in doing the victimology work on Suzanne, investigators know that was not the only time she came at Barry. Investigators know that was not the only time she came at Barry. Now, bear in mind the information that's been struck, that they can't talk about what Sheila Oliver has said. What seems like they've got some separate information. I don't know whether the separate information is based on what Sheila said. I don't know. Anyway, it says, and that when Suzanne got frustrated, she would physically come at Barry. Barry said, she physically come at me several times through my life and I took it. And I'm a man and I'm tough and I can take it. Gotta lie about the scratch marks in front of people when they're on my face. But that is the only time I ever touched her. And I swear to God, I would never lay a hand on my wife. And that was just a crazy reflex. And so this is really crazy, is he actually, out of his own, he talks about gotta lie about the scratch marks. So it's almost like he's saying, typically, usually when this happens, he actually gets scratched. And then he lies about it. And then it says here, 58, reference the scratches on Barry's left arm on May 13th in Chaffee County Sheriff's Office photos. Barry later to the FBI said he did not recall how he got those, possibly from a tree. But what we've now asserted and what we've now established is when Barry and Suzanne fought, he often got scratched by Suzanne. And so the question is, if Barry and Suzanne fought on that Saturday, didn't he get scratched by Suzanne? Special Agent Harris asked Barry what he meant when he said this might be God's way of resolving things. Barry said, I tell you what, I've had a very hard time understanding why God did this. And he allowed it. If you know what you know that he allows bad things to happen. But all that we've ever been through, and all we are, I couldn't understand it. And maybe we'll never understand until we get to heaven. So cops, judges, jurors, just go home. Don't try and understand it. Don't try and think about it. You'll find out when you're in heaven. Somebody did something to someone, but just leave him alone. It'll get sorted out in heaven. Let's do it that way. If I would have known this in the beginning, I wouldn't have had to suffer for 9 months, not knowing why God did what he did. I'm not saying he did it to punish Suzanne because of her affair, but it makes more sense than what I knew before you guys came today. In a way, he is saying to punish Suzanne because of her affair. Barry said he wanted the news of the affair to be kept between agents and him, adding, and if we can keep all this private between us forever, that's all I would ever want. That's kind of how the interview ends. If we can keep all this private between us forever, that's all I would ever want. Okay. I think Barry's going to get his wish. So that was a statement he made on the 27th, and it spans quite a few pages. Now we're going to go to the 28th, and I think I'm not going to take it further than that. I need to get going, and I think Stephanie does as well. So I'm just going to go through the next statement, I think this is the 10th one he made. I'll say that under correction. We're now page 64 of 129, January 28th, 2021. In this interview, Barry suggested that Suzanne ran away, discussed with agents her numerous trips to meet her lover, was told by agents that her lover thought the affair led to a homicide, and was told that no body cases could be proven. Special Agent Harris and Grusing attempted to contact Barry Morphy in a construction area behind his temporary residence in Poncha Springs, Colorado. He spoke with agents by cell phone as he walked back and forth in front of the car, about 50 yards away from the vehicle, though agents said they needed to meet with him. Some of the conversation included, after thinking about so I think what's kind of going on here is the authorities are saying this guy is really acting in a way that doesn't seem appropriate. And so they're actually picking up on a lot of small things that to them just don't seem normal or appropriate for someone who's innocent. And they're just making notes of that. After thinking what he learned yesterday, Barry suggested that Suzanne ran away. He said, "Can you answer that? Can you answer? Could she possibly have staged her bike and got in the car with somebody? I know that they did research on all of the vehicles that were in the area. And I mean, did that clear that, possibility? Because she's not a dumb person. She's pretty stinking smart. And if she's thinking of just taking off, that's something that she would think about. I know her. Is that a possibility that she did that?" So he seems to be hoping or thinking of a possibility where she now staged the bicycle and she ran off. And, because of the information about the affair, I guess she's run off to have an affair. Special Agent Grusing told Barry that Suzanne sent her lover photos of herself serving as her last proof of life. Barry said, "Well, let me tell you this and see if you can shed some light on this. I told you that in the past year, not the past year, but before that happened the past year, she had taken 7 trips by herself. Are you guys aware of those?" Now, you've got to kind of ask yourself, why didn't Barry mention this earlier? Why is he mentioning it after it's become clear that she had an affair? Can you hear Timmy chomping on his big bone? So I'll show you guys. You can just sort of see the side of it there. Timmy. Okay. Let's just look at some of your questions. A third finger points in another direction. Terry says, "Court, please." Who comes up with that kind of scenario? Yeah, lucky boy, that's for sure. Stephanie says it reminds me of Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. So I think one does have to ask, did Brian Laundrie find out that Gabby was interested in someone else? Could that have made Brian really upset? What do you guys think? Like, he's engaged to her, he's gotten on this van life thing, he's gotten quite uncomfortable, he's even been apprehended by the police, only to find that someone has responded to Gabby being very pretty on social media and they are kind of chatting. Could that be something that led to something? If you're a controlling person and you want to possess someone, you see a person as a kind of an object, as a possession, and then only to find that you don't control them, you don't own them, they, in terms of their own free will, they've decided that they actually like somebody else. How do you regain control in that situation? How can you keep control of someone who wants to be with someone else. And put in another way, how do you keep control permanently over someone who you've realized doesn't want to be with you? Nisi says, I don't think you can control. No, you can't. But if you feel like you must control, you have to control, how do you control? Yeah, you definitely would have felt used. Special Agent Grusing confirmed, and Barry replied, and one of them was to Louisiana. Are you aware of that one? Special Agent Grusing confirmed, and Barry replied, and was this individual that she was having an affair with at that location with her? Special Agent Grusing asked Barry his thought and why it brought up Louisiana. Barry said, because it would just, when it happened, and she said she was going there, it didn't make any sense at all to me. She's like, I've wanted to go, blah, blah, blah. It's almost like Barry seems to be saying, go to Louisiana, you'll find her there. And she was going through cancer, and I was trying to make her happy, wanted to give her whatever she wanted. But when I was questioning her, it didn't make sense to me why she would want to go there. So now it's quite weird. The agents are questioning Barry, and Barry's talking about questioning her. Footnote 59, Barry admitted to questioning Suzanne about the New Orleans trip to meet Libla. Further evidence is suspected the affair. So the case that the authorities are trying to make is that Barry did know about the affair. That's the thing that they are trying to assert here. Barry's trying to plead innocence and ignorance, that he just didn't know about it. And if he didn't know about it, there was no reason for him to get upset and be hot-headed about it. If he did know about it, then what? Then there's a possible motive here. Barry asked, so I mean, then that means you guys have evidence. Now, what's also quite interesting here is Shanann didn't suspect Chris Watts of having an affair because of the type of guy he was. It's just like, nah, he would never, he just doesn't have any game. I wonder whether Barry didn't think the same way about Suzanne, that she's just too much under his control, but also a good person, a genuine Christian, I think more genuine than him possibly, but basically that he just couldn't imagine, she was basically a loyal companion, right? And so he just wouldn't really have thought about that. And so, I mean, I think a lot of us, when we found out Suzanne had an affair, we were quite surprised. We thought it could only be Barry having an affair in this situation. Well, I wonder whether Barry didn't think the same thing, kind of thing. Nisi says he probably thought she couldn't live without him, or she couldn't operate independently. She knew her role as a mom, but no other role, kind of thing. Barry asked, so I mean, then that means you guys have evidence that she's not. So again, now he's trying to find out, what do you know? Special Agent Grusing stated that the FBI uses methods to determine if someone is alive or not. And I think kind of what they mean is, for example, some of the methods are, has this person used their credit cards? Another one is, to some extent, I guess you could use facial recognition, but another one is cadaver scent. That's a pretty clear indication is if someone is likely, if their human remains related to the context of someone's disappearance. But, as someone used either their phone or credit card or made contact to any of their network, have they accessed their social media? Barry asked, in your systems of investigation, these things that, or physical evidence. So Barry seems to be a bit flustered here. In other words, along this, in the context of if Suzanne is alive or not. Barry's getting a little bit nervous here. He's not speaking properly. So he says, in your systems of investigations, these things that, or physical evidence. Special Agent Grussing concurred there was little physical evidence, and he told Barry that recently some no-body homicide cases have used the FBI to prove someone is not alive. So it's a little bit badly expressed here. Barry responded, that's very interesting. I think, I don't know if it comes from the movies or what, but there's been this perception that no body, no crime. If you don't find a person's body, there's no way you're going to prove a crime. And that's just not the case. A good example is the Suzanne Morphew case. A good example is the Kelsey Bereth case, where there was no body found. They did find like a little tooth fragment, and in that case, the mistress came forward, and despite there not being a body, they convicted Patrick Frazee. So Patrick Frazee also thought no body, no crime. I don't really know where that myth came from. I don't know if it's to do with Khashoggi, that journalist that disappeared, but certainly there's this perception that no body, no crime is just not true. But it seems like some people took that as an opportunity to, no body, no crime. I don't know whether the Casey Anthony case had something to do with that as well. Kaylee's remains disappearing. When they were found, they were in such a state, and then you can't prove anything, and then does somebody get away with murder, kind of thing. I don't know if that is a factor. Another possibility is the Madeleine McCann case. Somebody disappears, well, no crime, no prosecution. Let's just read some of your comments. It seems like Barry is the one questioning the investigator. Jean says he knew she was seeing someone with the name Jeff, but he didn't know the last name. I think they can show that with his Facebook activity on her account late Saturday. That's an excellent point from Jean. I think there were a lot of friend requests from Jeff. There were a lot of friend requests to guys called Jeff. That's a really good point. Nisi says, in my opinion, I think Suzanne was such a big part of Barry's identity. Without her, he actually would be lost. He was the one who couldn't live without her. I think the other thing is, if you look at how filthy and messy Barry's truck is, you kind of get the idea that doesn't he need someone to clean up after him? If you compare the crime scene in the Chris Watts case to the crime scene, which is really scattered and dispersed in the Barry Morphew case, you really get a sense of one case that is covered up quite neatly and another one that is an absolute mess. Even though certain things are cleaned and covered up, it's still very messy. Stephanie says, wow, I forgot about the Facebook activity. Okay, so continuing here, Barry asked, when you approached him, her lover, what was his demeanor? So Barry is definitely now playing the part of the investigator, even the words he's using. Special Agent Grussing said he was shell-shocked and very contrite, meaning kind of remorseful. Special Agent Harris confirmed, adding that the man feels bad about it. Barry asks, feels bad? He feels bad about the affair. Special Agent Grussing said he wonders if the affair caused her to disappear and caused her homicide. So that is, I think, exactly how Nicole Kessinger felt. And I think it's very plausible. It's not only plausible that someone would feel that way, but that they would believe that because I think it is believable. It is reasonable. And it's just quite interesting how Barry is now indignant and, I don't know, concerned about how Jeff is feeling given the situation that he is in. Because one could ask, does Barry feel bad? He's already, even if Barry is innocent, he's nevertheless kind of saying, you know what, this is God's judgment. I'm fine with that. Or, it actually makes sense. You don't actually hear him saying, I really miss my wife. I'm devastated, or whatever, over and over again. You don't really see that coming up. I wish I'd come home early. I wish I'd, and I remember you don't really get that. Special Agent Grissing added, Suzanne's lover said, maybe it was my fault. Maybe my relationship with Suzanne caused her to be killed. And so, yeah, Barry's silent for a few seconds. Remember what I've said about silence? Barry said, see, now you guys are talking. You're talking in a way that it really bothers me. Special Agent Grissing asked why. Barry said, because I have no evidence of my wife being dead. And you guys are absolutely certain of it. And that's very troubling to me. Quite an interesting thing that he's saying here. Special Agent Grissing said that yesterday Barry said he thought she was under the Beaver Dam, and Special Agent Grissing does not think that she would have survived down there. He says, I know, but I don't know for a fact. I said, that's my thought. After 9 months of nothing from anybody, that would seem to make sense why there's no evidence. But I don't know that for a fact. Barry said, let me ask you a question. You guys have bugged my phone. You've heard every conversation that I've had since May 10th. If there's one thing that I said, I mean, you've done this for 25 years. I mean, there's no conversation that I've had with anybody that would make you guys look at me as a suspect. It's quite funny that he stutters on that last word. Of course, he has had a conversation with Holly. Again, he's making this big grandstanding global statement. Is it true? I also think one's got to look at when Barry makes these big, so on the one hand, when he's silent, you've got to look at the context, why is he being silent? Also, when he makes these big global statements, what is he trying to get away from? Special Agent Grissing reminded Barry about the problems he cited earlier with CBI, adding that Barry's statements do not make sense with some of the evidence. Special Agent Grissing told Barry the FBI was not after him, but just trying to find Suzanne. Barry said, okay, well, I'm at my meeting. I've got to get back and get to work. So I kind of get the idea that Barry's thinking, are you going to arrest me? Am I a suspect? I'm not? Okay, well, I need to get going, ciao. I need to kind of get off the line. How long is this February 28th statement? Seems like it's pretty long, going on and on and on and on. Yeah, this one goes on and on. So I think we're going to leave it here. What is quite interesting is they give Barry, it seems like they give him a month to stew on what has been discussed and maybe also to forget what he said. And then they're going to talk to him a month later with more questions. And once again, it's the 28th and is it the 29th? 29th of February 2021. So I'm not going to take it further than that. It has been over 2 hours. I think Stephanie wants to go to bed. I need to get to the gym. I said it's still raining, so it was a good call not going cycling. If I lived in England, I don't know what I would do, but I certainly don't like the idea of being wet in the wind and wet roads. I don't really like that. Mountain biking is okay, but road cycling definitely not. So I'm not going to take it further than that. We're now on page 64 I'll continue with that, I think, on Tuesday. Not sure what time, but I'll let you guys know. So do you guys see just how important these last interviews also were? You're getting so much more from Barry. We're also getting to know him a lot better. We're also getting the vital aspect, which is when Barry arrived home, what happened, and some more inconsistencies from Barry, where first he imagines Suzanne is not alive, and then he gets very indignant that they suggest he's alive. Also, he's now saying that Suzanne staged the bike, but the important part there is that he is depicting the bike as being staged, and I think the bike was staged. Stephanie says, I think we're on page 66. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we are on page 60, bottom of page 66, that's right. Okay. Heather says, lots of food for thought. Nisi says, getting to know just how creepy he is. Terry says, so much information. Thanks, Nick and chat and mods. Stephanie says, wow, this is jam-packed with info. It is, eh? That's why, if you race through the affidavit, you're looking for what the ifs and sort of big fireworks, you're not really going to find the reality of what's going on. It's a narrative and it's evolving. So you really do need to go through it slowly and systematically. That's what we're doing. Okay, so I just want to thank the members, the new members, and also the mods that are here. Stephanie, I really thank you for being here at like 10 minutes short notice. Really good to have Jean here with us as well, and Sharon also looking in. Also, thanks for your super chats. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a good, those of you in America, I hope you have a good night's rest. And there's going to be a really good episode on Van Gogh dealing with a big argument that he has with his family in early July. And what impact did that have on his death? What is it? You learn so much about a person through what they're arguing about and how they react in an argument. And an argument can actually make things better, where you actually communicate, I'm not happy about this, and you can actually gain understanding, or you can allow an argument to actually fester and undermine your relationship. An argument can actually bring you closer, but it can also, if you allow it to, it can harm your relationship. Stephanie says it's a big chapter. So I'm going to eat this apple. It's kind of going to be my breakfast. Then I'm going to go for a bit of a bike ride. Then I'll have a proper breakfast. But I just want to thank you guys for joining me. Also, the people who aren't chatting here, I see there's, I think at one point we were about 150 people. I really appreciate you guys being there. I think you'll join me in saying this is really important to go through before the trial. We want to know how much substance there is to this case. And also, we want to try and get to know Barry. We want to try and get to know him a little bit better. I found it quite interesting that he refers to himself kind of indirectly, people describing him as a hothead. Do you think he is? Okay, thanks a lot, Stephanie. So that's cool. We've done about 2 hours, 15 minutes. I'm glad that we had actually got through this. Looking forward to Van Gogh with Stephanie tomorrow kind of afternoon. It'll probably be somewhere around about 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'd prefer 1. I don't know if you can do that, Stephanie, but otherwise it might be a bit late for me. For those out there in the YouTube wilderness, consider becoming a member of this channel and join the conversation. Obviously, when there's only a few people in terms of the members, I can engage with you guys more often and more frequently. So consider doing that. Okay, so those of you who are in the UK listening, I guess your day's about to start just like mine is. Hope you have a wonderful Sunday. And those who are about to go down for the night, I hope you have a good restful sleep. Stephanie says, can we do 1:30 p.m.? That's definitely doable. I appreciate that half an hour. If you would prefer to, we can also do 2, but 1:30 will definitely work. Again, thanks so much, Stephanie, for being here. I think you were the first one in on very, very short notice. I really appreciate it. Guys, sleep well, take care, and see you next time. Take care. Shall I just show you Timmy before Timmy's out for the count, right? Timmy, go for a walk. Go for a walkie. And maybe we will. Okay, guys, see you guys next time.